Poise, beauty, a fashion icon. Many different perceptions exist about Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy. Some perceived her as a beautiful woman only consumed with shopping and traveling. Nothing could be further from the truth. In January of 1961, John F. Kennedy was sworn in as America's youngest president, bringing with him his 31-year-old wife and 2 young children. The administration's motto of the New Frontier brought the promise of hope for the future. Just months after taking office, however, the Bay of Pigs invasion was a painful setback for the new president. With the world watching, President Kennedy was humiliated by the failed overthrow of the communist-dominated government in Cuba, and some perceived him as weak. From her study of history and literature, Jackie Kennedy knew that a carefully crafted image could be a powerful tool. She used fashion, films, and foreign travels to help transform the young administration's image to one of strength and leadership. During the Cold War, Jackie used her diplomatic skills to help advance U.S. foreign policy objectives and improve America's image worldwide.
Because she was so popular, because her look was so popular, because she went to foreign countries and people were just so interested in her and seeing her, they helped to create a sort of goodwill toward the United States. She and her look and her entire spirit helped to create a goodwill toward the United States. And that always helps along diplomacy and other just good feelings for the United States of America.
A-line dresses, strands of white pearls, and big bouffant hairdos topped by pillbox hats. The clothing choices Jackie made reflected a conscious effort to convey the spirit of her husband's administration, youthful but always with substance as its essence. Just a month after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, Jackie Kennedy accompanied the president on a diplomatic trip to Canada. Prior to the visit, the Canadian ambassador cautioned the Kennedys that, "We Canadians don't show our emotions." The ambassador obviously underestimated Jackie's charisma. The Canadians went wild with enthusiasm when they saw Jackie dressed in a red wool suit and matching pillbox hat that resembled the uniforms of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, a subtle compliment to the Canadian people. It was at this time that President Kennedy realized what an asset Jackie was. It was on her trip to Paris in the same year that Jackie emerged as a worldwide figure and displayed her own brand of personal diplomacy. Jackie agreed to go to France for the president's meeting with General Charles de Gaulle, partly because she knew Jack was uneasy about seeing de Gaulle after the Bay of Pigs. Jackie wanted to bridge the gap between de Gaulle and her husband. Having once studied in France, Jackie was fluent in French, and before the trip, she translated de Gaulle's memoirs and read them aloud to Jack. And while on the trip, she seated herself between her husband and de Gaulle and served as a translator. Jackie spoke with de Gaulle about French history, arts, and culture, and warmed him to the Kennedy presidency. Kennedy told his aides that he and de Gaulle were hitting it off, probably because I have such a charming wife.
Because President Gaulle was so much older than President Kennedy, it's thought that at the time that he didn't take him very seriously. Her human touch in bridging that gap between husband and president and putting that humanness involved, plus her charm and all the poise that she had, it was invaluable to allowing her husband to be taken more seriously and to do the business of government. She did that with so many world leaders. She simply knew the right thing to do at the right time and all the time. And it simply made it so much easier for maybe not just her husband, but for other diplomats of this country to do their work, the Secretary of State.
I do not think it altogether inappropriate to introduce myself to this audience. I am the man who accompanied Jacqueline Kennedy to Paris, and I've enjoyed it.
Thanks in part to Jackie's diplomatic achievements, President Kennedy left with a renewed faith in a long-standing relationship with France. The next stop for the Kennedys was Vienna, and a meeting with Russian President Nikita Khrushchev. Once again, Jackie's charm proved to be an important diplomatic force, with the New York Times headline reading, "First Lady Wins Khrushchev Too." Jackie's diplomatic successes were witnessed at home as well as abroad. In July of 1961, Jackie orchestrated a monumental state dinner at Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, to honor Pakistan's President Ayub Khan. Since both Pakistan and India were critical to U.S. hopes of preventing a communist takeover of Asia, Jackie knew the importance of creating an image that powerfully advertised the U.S. as the greatest revolutionary country on earth. On February 15, 1962, 3 out of 4 televisions in America were tuned in to watch a tour of the White House with Mrs. John F. Kennedy. Jackie set out to make the White House the symbol of power that her husband's troubled presidency had yet to achieve. Jackie imagines a transformed White House alive with history and culture and restored to its former glory. After great debate, Jackie formed the Fine Arts Committee to raise funds to restore the White House without using government money. Deemed a huge success, the White House was transformed into a magnificent mansion that proudly reinforced America's good taste and its historical role as the bedrock of democracy. Just as the president's popularity was slipping as a result of the Bay of Pigs invasion, civil rights uprisings in the South, construction of the Berlin Wall, and communist victories in Laos, Jackie's popularity was increasing. As part of the Cold War campaign to promote U.S. interests and democracy abroad, the United States Information Agency enlisted Jackie's help to sell America overseas. USIA distributed a tour of the White House with Mrs. John F. Kennedy to 106 countries, with Mrs. Kennedy taping a brief introduction in French and Spanish for distribution in countries speaking those languages. That same year, Jackie made a tour of India and Pakistan without the president, but with the USIA camera crews. Just weeks before her visit, anti-American feelings were strong in India because the U.S. hinted that they might halt aid to India because it had invaded the colony of Goa. India's leaders and people fell in love with her.
Mrs. Kennedy's visit strengthens the friendly ties between India and the United States.
For the United States was vying with the Soviet Union for the hearts and minds of people in those developing nations. There were millions of people at the time who couldn't read or write, but they could look at this documentary and they could relate to her.
Perhaps Jackie's greatest diplomatic success came with her greatest loss, the assassination of her husband, President Kennedy. Jackie offered a much-needed image of composure and courage.
It was an extreme importance for the rest of the world to know that the United States was going on as before. Everything she did was really quite magnificent and filled with dignity and stature, and said to the people of the United States, boy, if I can handle it, you can handle it.
A parade of leaders from 92 nations, including de Gaulle, joined Jackie to walk behind President Kennedy's casket and then at a diplomatic reception. Days after the assassination, Jackie penned a letter to Chairman Khrushchev calling on him to remain committed to nuclear arms reduction.
She wrote to Khrushchev, practically begging him in her own manner to continue the work. It's just that she and her husband, she knew, were enemies, but they also had a strong respect for one another, and both knew the value of ending this Cold War, and she begged him to get along with the new president.
In recognition of her diplomatic skills, President Johnson offered her an ambassadorship. She declined. The woman who entered the White House insisting she hated politics became a highly skilled diplomat in the course of the Kennedy presidency. She used her diplomatic skills to transform the way America was perceived at home and abroad, a nation of culture and friendship. And even in her darkest days, she shined and showed the international world that America remains strong.
See you got your brand new leopard skin Pillbox hat.